I was thinking about a slow cooker recipe for this video, and I started to make a list of things to pick up at the store. And then I was like, hold your horses, Mindy, hold on. We have food in this kitchen already. Maybe I should make an effort to use the things I already have and prevent it from going in the garbage can later. I went out to my chest freezer in the garage and found near the bottom a chuck roast. A couple months back, we were supposed to host some people for dinner, but I ended up being sick, so we had to postpone. And I just chucked this chuck roast into the freezer, and quite honestly, I kind of forgot about it. And I didn't even bother to repackage it for long-term storage in the freezer. I just threw it in there in the grocery store packaging, which in my opinion is not the best for keeping out the freezer burn and keeping the flavor in. So it definitely needs to get used ASAP. In the veggie crisper in the refrigerator, I pulled out an onion and some garlic cloves. And I also had some carrots and some celery that had been in there for a while and definitely need to get used quickly. They were sort of on the brink of spoilage. I washed the celery. I peeled the carrots because I think it's faster than washing them. And then I just gave the onion, celery, and carrots a very rough chop and dropped those into the bottom of my slow cooker along with the garlic cloves. I sprinkled some of those around. I pulled my chuck roast out of the freezer last night and let it thaw a little bit overnight in the refrigerator. I sprinkled salt and pepper on both sides, probably 1 or 2 teaspoons of salt total because this is the 3-pound chuck roast, I think. I pressed that into both sides of the meat and then placed it on top of the veggies in the slow cooker. I did not add any extra fat, any oil or butter, because I feel like this roast has some good fat marbling throughout it, and that will render and add a lot of flavor to the roast as it cooks. I could not find my beef bouillon to save my life. I have since found it. I set it aside with some other ingredients that I'm gonna use in a recipe later this week. But since I couldn't find my beef bouillon, I went to my refrigerator and found a couple little packets of stock concentrate that came from a meal kit. And I often have little odds and ends left over from my meal kits, and they come in handy. I save them and I use them later. Like the little packages of thyme that I found in my pantry that I added to my broth mixture along with a little bit of red wine. Probably about half a cup. That went into the slow cooker with the roast and the veggies. And then I remembered that I also had some fresh rosemary in the refrigerator, also left over from a meal kit because they sent me more than I needed for the recipe. And I love fresh rosemary, and it's kind of expensive when you're buying just a little package of it at the store, so I didn't want it to go to waste. So I put a couple of whole sprigs on top of the roast, and then a couple of other sprigs I took apart and sprinkled on top of that. I'm trying something different with my potatoes today, and I really hope it works out. I mean, it's always a good idea to experiment with something you've never done on camera, right? I mean, that always ends well. I had about half of a 5-pound bag of russet potatoes in my pantry that I wanted to use. But I am cooking this roast on high because typically I will cook my roasts like overnight. I will cook them as long as I can because I want them to be very tender, and I'm starting this at about 9 o'clock in the morning. And I feel like russets don't really do well in my slow cooker recipes with long cook times. So instead of adding them with the rest of the vegetables, I decided just to peel them and rinse them and then place them on the perimeter of the crock pot in hopes that they'll just steam, cook and get tender throughout the day. And then I'll take those out later on, and my plan is to turn them into mashed potatoes. So we'll see how that works out. So I ended up not going to the grocery store, not purchasing a single new item for this recipe. I just put it together by going around to my pantry, fridge, and freezer, choosing some items, some of which I had forgotten about that needed to be used up. And I think this is gonna turn into a really delicious dinner. And we saved some things from going into the trash can later. Now that I have dinner pretty much taken care of, I have freed up some time to tackle another project around my house. So in sticking with this theme of making good use of stuff we already have, I am going to tackle a project upstairs in our little bonus / playroom with this old entertainment unit that I need to clean out and tidy up. If you live in a 2-story house with older children and you have your master bedroom down, let me know if, like me, you have to remind yourselves every day or two to actually go upstairs and make sure that it hasn't descended into just complete chaos. I just never know what I'm going to find, I feel like, when I come up here. There's the pile of stuff. There it is. It has moved to the top of the stairs now. I guess at least it's not at the bottom of the stairs anymore.
We're back in the car again.
Well, at least you're out of the tree.
This is what we are calling the bonus room. Now, proof that teenagers live here. We have trash and, lo and behold, a spoon, one of my spoons. This is the bonus room because it does not really function as a bedroom very well, and it's where we send all of the bonus furniture that we are not using in other rooms, but that we still find useful and don't want to get rid of. We used to call it the playroom when the kids were little. They're, you know, teenagers now, so we have to call it the bonus room because that sounds just a little bit more mature. And even though it's really spacious, and we actually used it as a bedroom for our two oldest when we first moved here, they were 5 and 8 years old. We found out very quickly that it's not a great bedroom because it's over the garage, and so it's not always a very comfortable temperature for sleeping. It's kind of warm in the summer and cold in the winter. Although I will say it is helpful to have a couple of extra twin beds in here for when we have family come and visit and the kids need a place to sleep because they're displaced from their bedroom for guests, or like when we have cousins or friends come and sleep over. This was the table in our kitchen, in our breakfast nook before we renovated the kitchen. It was just a huge catch-all for clutter and we rarely used it. One of the best decisions that I made in that entire process was to turn that little breakfast nook into a sitting area with like a comfortable couch and a coffee table and a little TV, and not to put the little kitchen table back in that nook. That little breakfast nook or little hearth area in the kitchen gets used all the time now. But I didn't want to get rid of the table. It was still in great condition, so I brought it up here to the bonus room, and it gets used for like arts and crafts, for sewing projects when we actually have the time for that, and you know, for playing games. And I'm interested to see how it gets used over the summer because I didn't have this table put back together here until after the kids went back to school this year. And this room gets used a lot more in the summer because both Daniel and me work from home, and so we have to have a few quiet hours downstairs in the daytime, like for me to film, for my husband to take Zoom calls. So this is a great space for the kids to come up and hang out in. And I do have several little projects that I want to tackle over the summer and kind of reorganize and restructure this room. But today we're just going to work on this one right here, this entertainment unit. I think this is a very manageable project. It shouldn't take me too long, but I'm going to run downstairs and grab myself a beverage before we get started. So it's a good time to thank today's sponsor, Ultima. Here I am coming at you from my mobile office, aka the mom van. I've already dropped the kids at school, been to Bible study, returned a pair of shoes, and now I am about to do some Amazon returns. So the mom van is the place where I tend to spend a lot of my time these days. I actually started keeping a stash of healthy snacks in the back of the car. I almost always have some sort of beverage with me. Right now I'm working on this grape Ultima that I just mixed up right here in the car. I just pour one of the little Ultima packets into my bottle, give it a shake or a stir, and then I can sip it on the go. And on the go is something I am a lot of days, so I actually just keep a box of this in my car, which makes it extra easy. Ultima has 0 sugar, 0 carbs, 0 calories, and no artificial sweeteners. But what it doesn't have, in my opinion, is an overly powerful salty taste. It does have sodium plus 5 other essential electrolytes, but it doesn't have that salty aftertaste that you find in a lot of other electrolyte drinks. Getting those essential electrolytes in my day can be delicious and super easy. And let's face it, as a busy mom, super easy is something that I need more in my life. You can order Ultima, but it's actually available in Target stores. In fact, they have some new 8-count variety packs that you can pick up at Target, you know, when you're there doing other mom things. You can find Ultima in a variety of flavors in a Target store near you. And thank you again to Ultima for sponsoring today's video. Things don't have to look picture perfect to still be useful. My husband and I got this when we first got married, and we just celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. So this thing is 20 years old. It was originally in our living room in our first house that we lived in when we first got married, and it has moved around to a few different places over the years, like a nursery or a kid's bedroom, the playroom, the bonus room. Here it is still. This thing is old. It's so old it has a CD rack with CDs still in it, but it still serves a purpose. So we're gonna try to clean it up a little bit. Okay, there's actually some like good CDs in here. I'm actually gonna put a few of these on my daughter's bed, my oldest daughter's bed in her bedroom, because she drives, and she drives an older vehicle that has a CD player in it. And she is actually into like classic music, 80s music, like rock alternative from the 90s. So some of this fits that bill. She's gonna love this. We're not too big on video games in our family. We don't have like a PlayStation or an Xbox or the newest Nintendo. I think it's a Switch. We do have an old NES, like the original, the OG Nintendo from my childhood that we occasionally break out for fun, though it does take a special touch to actually make the games work. Years ago for Christmas, I got the kids a secondhand Wii, a Nintendo Wii, and nowadays, if the air temperature and crossbreeds and general room vibes are just right, the kids can get the Mario Kart game to work. My kids have just about outgrown this, but it is really cool if you are looking for like a video game option for younger kids that involves movement. It's called a Next Playground. And it keeps the kids moving. Like the games involve movement, a lot of them. I'm not gonna get rid of it, but I am gonna go ahead and just pack it up and store it for now. I also have an old VCR DVD combo machine down here. We're gonna test the DVD player out, see if it still works, but I know that there is a tape stuck in the VHS player, so it doesn't work anymore. And yes, I kept a VCR this long, and when my kids were little, I used to pick up VHS tapes of kids movies and Disney movies at the thrift store for like $1 or less, sometimes like 50 cents. It was actually much easier for a younger child, like 4, 5, 6, to operate a VCR, a VHS player, than it was a DVD player. And it was especially easier than operating like streaming services where you have to like turn so many different things on and change the input and sometimes enter passwords. The tape player was just so much easier for them to pop in a tape and press play. Okay, I found one lone VHS tape in here and I feel like I can't get rid of this one, but I don't have a VHS player anymore. But come on, Singing in the Rain, it's a classic. Now, I was born in 1982, so I'm kind of between Gen X and millennials. I remember owning VHS and cassette tapes. I remember when we got rid of those in favor of DVDs and CDs, and then we got rid of those so we could have magical access to all the entertainment digital streaming has to offer and never have to physically store our movies and music in our homes. Before there was HDMI, there were these things. Simple, right? Until we needed like a bajillion different streaming services just to watch the movies that we used to own outright. And even if I have some of my favorite shows and movies on some services, I'm not guaranteed they'll be there indefinitely. So I've started to actually repurchase my movie library, and I even find DVDs at my thrift store that are still in the shrink wrap. If I own the DVD, I know exactly where to find it. And I can watch it whenever I want, you know? Plus, I don't lose an entire evening to analysis paralysis, like scrolling through the endless options trying to pick the best option. I cannot be the only one who does that. There is something to be said for actually having fewer choices, or is it just me? I do have some storage space. I can keep some things. I don't have to get rid of something just because it's old. Some of my old stuff is fine. Some of it is even great. In fact, sometimes it's the new stuff that's junk. They don't make them like they used to, you know? Out with the new, in with the old. I think this is an underappreciated, often forgotten about movie. A very young Reese Witherspoon, like maybe 16. And I've watched this with my kids a couple of times. It can be kind of difficult to find, but if you remember this as a kid, let me know. I thought A Far Off Place was a really great, like, older kids movie. In some ways, I think we have the minimalism movement to thank for this, and I get it. I do. I think there are some great ideas and great mindsets that came out of that movement. I think it's good to think critically about purchases, not to let clutter take over our homes, to make spaces tidy, and to discover the amount of stuff I can reasonably manage without it negatively affecting my mental state. But I think at least in my case, I maybe played just a little too fast and loose with the garbage can and the neutral color schemes, and I ended up getting rid of stuff that I actually wished I had later. So now I find myself asking the question, if I have the storage space to save something, is this truly something that is no longer useful to me and will never be again? Or am I just tired of it right now? Now this thing definitely has some wear and tear and some scuffs and some scrapes from 20 years of use. I debated about whether or not to paint it, but honestly that just was not a thing that I wanted to tackle upstairs on the carpet. And I know I'm not going to be dragging it downstairs because I remember having to get this thing upstairs when we moved into this house 8 years ago. And I'm pretty sure this piece of furniture is only leaving this room again in pieces. So instead I used some of this Restore finish to try try to just kind of make the scuffs and the marks a little bit less noticeable. I have a couple of windows right next to this area where I'm working, so I feel okay like using this in here and cracking open the windows. Unfortunately, there were a few spots here that I had to sand a little bit because the wood was really damaged, so there's a little bit of discoloration, but still functions just fine. There's nothing wrong with it. 2 of the 3 cabinet doors were missing the pulls, and I thought about running over to Home Depot to get some, and then I remembered that downstairs in the hutch in my dining room, which was a gift from my mom when we moved into this house, she found it at a flea market, there were some drawer pulls because we had replaced the pulls on that hutch when we first got it. So I was able to just take off the remaining pull that was left on the 3rd door and replace it with 3 matching ones that I already had on hand. The only bummer was that I could not get the DVD player to work. It would not read them, and I tried several, including some that were like new out of the package and didn't have marks or scratches on them. But I want one up here because we come up here, especially the kids come up here to watch movies and shows, and we have so many great ones in our collection. So I'm trying to decide if I want to keep my eyes peeled for one second hand or if I want to go ahead and purchase that brand new. They're about 30 bucks on Amazon. And sometimes that kind of thing you want to purchase new, so you make sure you get one that is working fresh out of the box. So is it perfect? No, but will it live to serve our family another day or month or year or a few years? Absolutely, sure. I don't have to replace things that are still functioning for my family just for the sake of aesthetics. If I want to make a change, great, but I have, more so in recent years, started to ask why I want new and make sure it's for the right reasons. If something is still working, whether it's a 40-year-old Nintendo or a 20-year-old entertainment unit, and especially if it's in our home, the primary purpose of which is to serve our family, not look a certain way for strangers, then I want to save myself the time, money, and hassle of replacing it and just let it be a little longer. My roast cooked on high for about 8 hours. And my crock pot cooks hot, so it was fork tender and delicious. I already tasted it. I took the potatoes out. It was really easy to take them out of the crock pot. They are definitely also fork tender. The only thing I'm worried about is the flavor of these potatoes because I used wine in the cooking broth. So I don't know if that flavor is gonna come through. I'm hoping that copious amounts of butter and half and salt and pepper will help with that. So we'll just have to see. Okay, these turned out pretty good. I do not taste, you know, like the wine or the brothy flavor. Yeah, I think that worked out fine. McKenna says no gravy. You're just gonna eat your dinner standing up right there. You just came from track practice though. You're a hungry girl.
I also had 3 popsicles.
They don't need any more salt, you say?
They're salty enough.
This girl approves of the mashed potatoes. I am just gonna steam some green beans. I don't have any salad greens, and I'm out of broccoli, so that'll be our green side. I'm gonna make just a little bit of gravy. I think I'm the only person in the house that likes it, maybe my husband. So I just siphoned off with a ladle about a cup or so of the broth that's at the bottom of the crock pot. I will add a cornstarch slurry to that of maybe 2 tablespoons of cornstarch to a 1/4 cup or so of half and half, and kind of bring that to a simmer over the stove to make a gravy, at least for my plate, because I want a little gravy with these mashed potatoes. Okay, it's been a while since I've made a roast, and I normally don't make gravy, so maybe it's the gravy, but this is delicious. This is really hitting the spot. Like, I'm glad that I thought to do the potatoes that way and not just throw them into the bottom of the crock pot, then turn them into mashed potatoes later, but this is good. I hope this video was helpful or encouraging in some way. Thank you again to Ultima for sponsoring. You can pick out one of these videos to watch next, and I'll see you there.